Coast Rail Authority together. We have technical issues here, so we're going to wait 2 minutes. Yeah. Maybe. While they're getting ready there, I want to welcome everybody here. We've got a large crowd and a lot of things to talk about today. Heather, would you please call the roll?
Director Simonson?
Here.
Director Kelly?
Here.
Director Wolf?
Here.
Director Zedrick?
Here.
Director Olivier?
Here.
Director Myers?
Here.
Director McDonald?
Here.
Director Colfax? Chairman Hemphill?
Here. Thank you. Yeah, the button is up here. Okay, can you hear back there now? Probably a little better than you did before. Thank you very much. At this point, we'll call for the agenda approval. Can we have a motion to that effect?
Second.
Motion is second. Is there any discussion or any proposed additions to the agenda? Anything from staff? Okay. Then we'll call for the agenda approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, fine. Matters from the board. These would be things I assume that are not on the agenda. Director Meyer?
One is, again, I'd like to ask that to the extent it's feasible, the staff put on the internet the reports behind the agenda, Mr. Chairman. And secondly, that we look into the possibility of broadcasting the meetings as we do in Marin, whether by audio or TV. I don't know if you have that capability in any of the other locations, but it's very desirable for the public. Thank you.
Staff will note that and check it out. I don't know that anybody would be interested in spending broadcast on our deliberations, but certainly we can ask a question.
It might be good that the people driving Sonic.
Indeed. Yes, sir.
Yes, last month I brought up, I'm not sure if this microphone's on.
There's a little button there.
Thank you. I brought up the issue of clarification of the ownership of the NWP Railroad. As you know, it's in their business plan and widely thought in the public that there are 3 owners of that. I've come to find out that there is only one owner, and that would be John Williams. So I asked for clarification of that for the public record, and you said you'd follow up on that. And also for, who's also in that same document and thought, still believed out, I think, in the public, that a lot of those other people were also on the board of directors. So I again asked for clarification of that and wonder if you've had a chance to follow up with Mr. Williams.
No, I apologize, Director McDonald. I did not. We had some other things swirling around, and frankly, it slipped my mind. You think when you get old, you can use that excuse. I would, though, at this point, ask the question of council. They're not asking about the composition of our board or ownership. They're asking about our contractor. Is that an appropriate thing that we should be delving into, or should it be referred to the contractor? I just want to make sure we're following our own protocols.
Actually, our contract is with a corporation, so it's a closely held corporation, so it would be up to the contractor to divulge that information if they chose.
Well, I can see some advantages to it because, again, a lot of the old information has references to the Island Mountain Quarry and some of the cross ownership there. So I would leave that to the contractor, and to whatever extent there can be transparency, fine, but it's not for us to tell you how to run your business. So perhaps you and Mr. McDonald could meet and discuss that if you're willing to, John, or what's your response?
Well, I don't think as long as we're being sued by the county of Marin and the city of Nevada that I'm willing to meet with Director McDonald.
I assume that's an answer.
one of the reasons I'm bringing it up again is in reading the Redwood Marine Feasibility Study, which is only issued in November. It lists that there are 3 owners. Old mistaken information, so it's still out there. It's still being currently represented, or at least in now. I understand that the NWP didn't write that report, but it's and even in that report, there was concern about who the owners are. If you remember, one of the conclusions was that container companies and terminal operators would rather have a large company like UP be the owner. So I think the ownership is a very significant issue, and it's very significant, played a significant role in that Redwood Marine study. So I think it would be important to get clarification of that to the public and for all the feasibility studies that are going on.
Understood. Perhaps after February 26th, the answer might be different, so we're on a short fuse on this. I would suggest, in light of the litigation, that we respect Mr. Williams' feelings on this thing. I feel the agency does have an obligation to know who is behind the corporation, aside from the legal niceties of it. I'm not disagreeing with our counsel, so, but we are at a delicate tipping point right now, and frankly, I don't think any advantage we can give to the litigants who are suing us down there should be done. So we'll come back to it, and I assure you that we will come back to it. Are there any other matters from the board? Okay, with that, we'll move to the consent calendar and ask for a motion to approve or amend.
So,
We have a motion. Second. We have a second. Okay, it's open for discussion by the board. Are there any changes that anybody would like to make?
Mr. Chair, I just have an abstention on item 2 that I can participate in.
Okay, the minutes are so note that.
on item 1, Chairman, for the December 12 minutes, I abstained on items E4, E6, and E8, in addition to the ones noticed in the minutes. And item E2 was corrected at that meeting to show that Tom McDonald is on the Finance Committee and that I was on the Property Committee.
Heather, did you know this one? Okay.
And item E2 of the present agenda, the meeting of December 21, I'd just like to indicate that the minutes omitted discussion of a request made to try and get the staff to talk to other agencies with respect to funding. That was the issue of, I believe, the Shellville levee and rebuilding it, and I had suggested going to, for example, the Marin County Flood Control District until Alan, they pointed out to me that it wasn't in Marin, but there are similar agencies, and then we talked about the levy up here where maybe the Corps would have chipped in some money. I do want to emphasize that it's desirable for us to go to other agencies and ask for assistance where what we're doing assists the other agencies.
I don't think there'd be any disagreement on that. So can you note that request was made by Director Myers? And I think staff here's what you're saying.
I'm also going to abstain on items 3, 4, and 5 today.
Director McDonald?
Yes, I just want a clarification on one thing on the financials. I'm not objecting to them in any way, but, and this may be my naivety of being a new director, but on the revenue items, there's a rent for real estate, a revenue item. It was budgeted for the year at $250,000. Through 6 months we've collected, or it shows that our fiscal year to date rental revenue was $1,922. I think I know the explanation, but could somebody remind me exactly why there seems to be no rent from real estate coming in, especially when it was the budget. Is that a timing thing, or could you just clarify that?
Yes,
for me?
it is a timing thing, Director McDonald. One of the primary lessees is Williams Communication, for example, and they'll be sending us a check for about $90,000 shortly. There are a couple other lessees that checks will come in shortly that are fairly substantial amounts. But the vast majority of the property lease revenue is comprised of about 3 or 4 leases that haven't come in yet.
Thank you very much.
Does that answer your question?
It certainly does.
Any other directors have any questions or corrections to the consent calendar? Is there any questions or observations from the public on the consent calendar? There being none, then we'll call for the question. All in favor? No opposed?
As amended.
As amended with abstentions. Thank you. And the consent calendar stands approved. At this point, we get to the invitation to the public to speak to the board. We have a number of issues this morning that are on the agenda, so I'm going to reiterate what the rules of engagement are in this thing. We ask that you speak to subjects at this point in the meeting that are not on the agenda and that are within the jurisdiction of the authority. And we also ask that you be considerate of the time and the other speakers that want to be here and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. And if there's a number of people that are going to be saying the same thing, we ask that you try to avoid redundancy. Again, we're devoting a significant amount of time to the bicycle issue this morning. There'll be ample time then to discuss that matter. So at this point in time, anybody that would like to address the agency, come forward. Please identify yourself. And again, if you could respect the time restraints, we'd really appreciate it.
Well, I guess I'll start the ball game. I'd like to introduce myself to Chairman Mr. Hemphill and the members of the board, ladies and gentlemen in the audience. I'm Paul Lorenzen. I live out at Spruce Point, 2195 Horizon Drive. Give you a little background. I've been a member of one or another union for over 48 years. I'm retired, very time. And I'm here to give you my thoughts on the railroad and the bicycle trail. I'm not against either one. I favor the railroad in the respect that we may get some local union jobs, which have a definite effect on the local economy. Myself, at this time, I receive a pension check every month. My medical bills for me and the wife are paid for the rest of my life. I had an investment annuity that I cashed in. Since I've retired, I haven't had any payments. I pay cash for what I buy. I'm a participating member of society. My insurance pays the bills on these people that are working for $9, $10, $12 an hour and can't pay their hospital bills, can't afford insurance. And that's just my view as being very important that we get some good paying jobs back in the area. We've been exporting work and we just don't have any resources left, no fish, no timber that we can speak of. And to get these good paying jobs with benefits being the big thing. And if anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning, I'm Patty Clary. I work for California Municipal Alternatives to Toxics, and I understand you will have comments from the public after each agenda item that is open for discussion. Do you have a sign-up sheet for that, or is that just going to be
It's going to be, as people come up there, we've never done this before. Probably this morning it would have been a good idea. But, normally what we do is just ask you to identify yourself and the podium.
Okay, thank you.
Daniel here, $10 million of the headwaters fund was given away out of this county for an airline. And I don't want to fight over a trail, and I don't want to fight over the railroad. I want to see unity here. I'd like to see us all working towards one goal, and that's to make the goal better. And if we had passenger trains, we could have $500,000 that could be easily spent to build a system that would help everyone here. Gas now is almost $4 a gallon. We got a railroad that's right next to CR and Humboldt State University. So if we were building this railroad from both ends, we would have unity. Instead, I hear about this lawyer lawsuit, and I feel I see ununity. And that's where we need to move forward in one direction. The railroad was built from two directions. And that's what this county here needs more than anything is public transportation.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ken Skaggs. I'm a resident of Eureka, a native of Humboldt County, and I have a degree in economics from UCLA. So I did leave the area once upon a time for a little bit. But I'm also a long-term supporter of the railroad, and I hope you keep working toward maintaining the integrity of the right-of-way of the railroad throughout the whole district. Just an observation, though. The people who don't follow this too specifically and come to your meetings, it might be very worthwhile, because it's such a long railroad, that if you posted or had a traveling copy of a map, so that the residents of this very large district that the railroad sits in would know where Shelbyville is or Lombard, and whether or not the main rail that we would be interested in up here really goes through Novato or cuts off to the east before Novato. I'm just mentioning that as an item that you might want to consider, either on the screen over here or have a roll up, or even handouts of a simplified map of the railroad, because 300 miles, that's a long distance. And whether it really goes through the corner of Trinity County, there's a lot of people that are confused, when they read some of these things. But keep up the good work, and you have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Well, that's an excellent idea. I wish I'd thought of it. And so, I instruct staff. I know we have one poster, or perhaps where we have a PowerPoint, we can just leave it on the screen, so if somebody has a question,
Shouldn't have touched it. Good morning. My name is Sid Berg. I'm a lifelong resident of Humboldt County. I'm also the president of the Humboldt County and Delmar County Building Trades Council, representing 17 craft unions in this area. I'm also a trustee on the board of directors for the Central Labor Council of Humboldt and Delmar counties. I just want to let you know that labor councils, well, first of all, I'd like to say that thank you for coming up here and holding a meeting up here and giving the local people a chance to input. There'll probably be a lot more workers today, but during the work day, they all have to get out there and try to make a living and support their families. Organized, or the represented workers in the area have the luxury of having their elected representatives here before you to try to represent their views, but there's also a lot of unrepresented people that would probably be here if meetings were held in the evening. Anyway, thanks for coming up. Both councils are on record of supporting the rail. The rail has been a vital part of this community since it was built back in 1914, I believe. Yes. And I know you go into more things later. We support the rail. We support the concept of trails too, if they can work compatible with the trails, with the rails. And also, I'd like to. I know we've got a short time here, but I'd like to see something happen on the little rail we have between Eureka and Arcata. I've been in other areas and I've seen maintenance vehicles, rubber-tired trucks and maintenance vehicles. They drive up on the tracks and they drop a set of steel wheels and they go down and maintain the tracks. Even if you guys started a little bus, you could call it a magic bus, painted psychedelic or whatever, but get something moving between Eureka and Arcata. That would let us know that that rail is there for both communities. Maybe it'll be the start of something great for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the record, we will be discussing some efforts up here later in the agenda for resolution of this.
Pete Oringer, Sid's taller than I. Thank you for meeting up here again. We appreciate the venue. I would like to say that I support your efforts to return basic transportation infrastructure in the form of rail up here. It's the same as roads, it's the same as airports, and even fiber optic. It's all a form of transportation. And the public-private partnership that you have used as your business plan is a great way to do it. And once we have that basic infrastructure, then private enterprise figures out how to use it and how to use it efficiently. And it's no different than telephone or roads. Sometimes you can't justify everything in the future that will happen in the future, but it works out well when you have that basic infrastructure in place, just like sewers, just like roads, whatever. I would like to propose that you may want to place comments with the Humboldt Bay Harbor and Recreation District on their proposed feasibility study to examine what direction they should take in development of the deep water portion of the Humboldt Bay Harbor. That portion which is underutilized now because of changes in the economy and changes in rail service for the past decade or so. Your comments would probably be salient to their efforts because your interests and theirs tie in quite directly. So I would like to suggest that maybe some sort of letter with comments be initiated for the consultants in the feasibility study. And as you are probably aware, they are having a meeting tomorrow night in this venue for public comments, but they're going to be accepting public and written comments up until the 15th of January, and then they will post those comments on their website. And also provide those public comments to their consultants, Trans-Systems, who are generating the feasibility study. And that feasibility study is destined to have many decision points along its plan, and future public comments would also be appropriate to address that as it develops. Thank you very much. I know it's not an agenda item. It could be perhaps acted on if the majority of you wanted to suggest that public comments be generated by your staff and approved and placed on with the Harbor District. Thank you.
Thank you. You may be aware, or I think you are aware, that we have a joint liaison committee with two of our directors and the port people, so we are communicating with them that we'll discuss the notion of what the appropriate content of a comment would be to follow up on it.
Thank you, Chairman.
Just so there won't be any surprise, I've asked Mitch to stay over, and he's going to be attending tomorrow night's meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Chairman, comment from one of the directors.
Yes, I would like to point out to that gentleman and remind our board that at our last meeting we voted 7-0 to have staff prepare a memo on the Redwood feasibility study and present it to us today. As you know, I was a little disappointed that that didn't get on the agenda, wasn't done. And so we had intended to do exactly what this gentleman asked for, and unfortunately we didn't follow through. And I just want to register that we did do that, and I'm really disappointed.
Mitch, would you like to respond?
Sure. To that point, Director McDonald, we, as has been pointed out, are going to take up a joint application with the Harbor District on Prop 1B funding. That really took the majority of our attention in the last week and a half or so. In addition, the district itself, the Harbor District that is, hasn't really even commented on its own feasibility study. They're scheduled to do that tomorrow. So we just thought under the circumstances, it made more sense to comment after they had an opportunity to take comments themselves. And so we thought it might be better to have formally comment following the Harbor District's adoption of its comments.
Yeah, just as a matter of clarification, I was scratching my head trying to figure out which cog had slipped a gear here, because I do remember the conversation, and we had that vote under the assumption that the Harbor District would adopt, and it would be clear at a meeting that was quickly to follow our board meeting, one of the plans. What they opted to do was defer any decision on it until they got more public input. And I think in my email to you, Tom, I indicated that we didn't have any resolution to that issue, therefore it was very difficult for us to develop a map of how it affected us and what it really was, further to Mitch's comments. I think that's the reason. It may not be a satisfactory answer, but that is the reason. So I think after their meeting tomorrow, again, then it would be appropriate for Mitch to brief the directors on what the course of action is that they have taken and how it affects the NCRA, and also direct Mitch to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also wanted to point out, I have read the rail portion of the Medwin Marine feasibility study, and there is nothing controversial, there's nothing particularly in need of comment in terms of how they describe the NCRA. So I just wanted to point out, I have preliminarily looked at it, and much of what they say about the railroad is taken from our very documents and is accurate and truthful.
So some of it's a little dated, though, I would point that out. And this is what we're going to be about later in this meeting. Thank you. Any further comment from the public?
Hi, my name is John Webb. I'm a resident of Trinidad, and I'm here. I just wanted to make 2 points, hopefully quickly. One, to resist the dichotomy of rail or trail, not rail and trail. There are those who would tell you it has to be one or the other, not both. I think that we can find ways to make both happen. This county is full of intelligent people who can figure that out, and it ought to be able to happen. It's not impossible to have rail and trail. You can put the trail on the east side of 101. You can go to Caltrans and see if some of the pools of their money can be used to build the trail part. There's all kinds of options that can be pursued. The second thing I want to say is, just from a real political standpoint, most of the people, most of the voters in this county are familiar with the railroad. How? When they drive between Arcata and Eureka on the west side of 101, and they see the dirt washing out from under the tracks, the weeds growing up, and it doesn't create a very good situation in their minds of the rail being viable, just from a political standpoint. I think it's really important, therefore, as one of the other speakers said before me, get something moving on the tracks between Arcata and Eureka. The tourist train, the psychedelic bus, whatever. People out there working on it, fixing it up, will create a much better impression among the public while they're trying to make their minds up about this issue than sitting there watching the rail slowly deteriorate and fall into the ground. So I urge you, get something moving between Arcata and Eureka on the tracks as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a comment. We're kind of getting agenda creep here. Please reserve the questions on the trail until we get to that point on the agenda.
Chairman Hempel and members of the board, thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Mike Bittner, and I live here in Eureka. And I'm just going to repeat what I asked last time when you met up here. And that is to be more forthcoming with what are the grandest plans for the railroad and incorporate those plans into what the communities are thinking about. And certainly Eureka is one of them. As you know, our waterfront is beginning to see a real rebirth, and there's a lot of opportunity down there, including the Marina Center, the Hampton Inn, the Eco Hospital, all right along the railroad tracks. But none of us here know what that long-term position is by your board. You may well have it in your mind that there is only going to be one train a week, or there may be 20 trains a day. But none of us really know that long-term. You can see the bits and pieces as you go along, and one day I can see a letter by Chairman Hempel in the Marin J saying we're not thinking about the north end, and the very next week you have this proposal to bring gravel trains from the Eel River here through Eureka and over to Samoa. As wonderful as that idea might be for you, it also impacts all of us. And you're not taking into consideration what it means to a city like Eureka. When you run, for those of you who do not live here, drive down Waterfront Drive and see where that track goes, and see the potential for what's happening there and what's proposed along that Waterfront Drive. 20 trains going next to residential housing as proposed on the marina development. 20 trains next to the Hampton Inn. 20 trains a day next to the Eco Hospital. We don't know if it's 20 because we see there's 1,000 containers potentially coming through our city, but you never come out with the details of what is in your minds as the ultimate. What is the end game for this community? Does it mean that we become an industrial port, or is it just a boutique port and there are a few trains? But what we're asking for is more information, more inclusion. Talk to the city of Eureka. Have you been meeting with them about quiet zones and what the potential is for all those crossings that come right past and down through our old town? I don't think you have. And I think that's an important part of going forward, whether you want to gain support from the community or not, or the potential there, maybe there won't be support, but at least be genuine about it and talk about the future and what the big plan is, and not this piecemeal thing where one day we're not doing it and the next day we are. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Bittner, I normally don't like to engage in dialogue, but because you mentioned my name specifically in a quote, I want to clarify something. We speak of the Eel River Canyon as a division, and for all intents and purposes, there are three parts of this railroad, and we've been public on this many times. There is what we call the Russian River Division, which is south of Willits, which excludes that. And then there's the portion of the railroad around the bay here, which is not of any impact directly on the Eel River Canyon. So I'm not talking out of both sides of my face. We have looked at a short line concept up here and been encouraged to by many of the local people for many, many years. So that's not a new concept, and in no way contradicts our statement that we are not considering anything in the Eel River Canyon until we look at both the environmental and the economic justification for it.
And I understand.
Until we answer those questions, we're just speculating, so we're not making well.
Well, I know you're speculating, and unfortunately, we're all we suffer the impact of that speculation long term. There has to be some way that you can, in your plan, say the future may well hold this for you because you're going to be impacted by what happens throughout the 300 miles. It's nice to break it into separate pieces because that works well for you. I understand that. But what you're not taking into account is all the communities along the way that ultimately suffer the impact of the grand plan.
It does not work well for us. In fact, it's the very reverse of that. Those questions will be answered in the input, and the communication will take place as part of the environmental impact report process for the county canyon, which is going to be very lengthy and involve everybody. And to speculate prior to that information being collected and the input being put forth would just be that, speculation. So
I think it's disingenuous. I'm sorry.
Well, we can disagree. Thank you.
My name is Mark Mattioli, and I'm a local realtor and been involved in this issue for some time. And I've come before you to speak in favor of your efforts regarding the railroad. And I'd say as well, in favor, and I think that you are on the right track, so to speak, regarding your efforts. And I say, listen, every time I come here, I think, boy, what a tough job it is to keep going in this direction, to keep the railroad right away. To even though you don't have the funds, even though you're trying very hard to get the funds to get this portion of the railroad done, you still have to keep the right-of-way intact. And it's being challenged in many ways, and people don't believe there's a railroad there because there's no trains running on it. But it's composed of the line, it's right-of-way, the ground underneath it, the track that's there, all the effort and the tradition of it being there. I mean, that's the railroad we have. We have a railroad, and it's extremely valuable to the community. So I don't know much else to say, but that you would keep the faith regarding this subject and continue to work on the efforts you're doing in the South. As that gets completed, I see that it's going to be easier for us to get this portion done. Other than that, I say keep going, and thank you very much for your efforts. I think there's a high value to a railroad in the long run for many reasons. I think there's also a possibility that we could somehow share a portion of the right-of-way at points with the trail. And I think that can be done too. We're smart enough to figure that out. Thank you for your work. I know it's difficult.
else would like to come forward?
Good morning, you folks. Welcome back to Eureka, and I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that we brought out a lot of people to get some of these answers that they keep asking of you and of us. And as you know, and as we know, a lot of the answers to the last, next to the last speakers, not Mark's, but Mike's, have been out there. And if there aren't answers, it's because the answer isn't there yet, because it still has to go through the sequence. And we have, you know, talked till we're blue in the face whenever we talk to any of them. And we tell them, come to their meeting, ask them the questions yourself. And fortunately, they're here today, so I hope they'll finally get the message that you're not holding anything back. Just don't always have all the answers yet, because the answers aren't there.
Thank you, Kate. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Well, thank you very much, all of you. It's a valuable process, even if we don't always agree on everything. That's what public meetings are about, and we certainly respect that. I'd now like to go to presentations, and I'm going to take the liberty of turning the gavel over to Director Willie. You've been very much involved in this trail planning thing, and it is something, again, that's been pointed out that there's a good deal of public support for here, and it affects the railroad affects it. So I'll let Director Willie go. John, do you have an idea about how much time we're going to take on this?
Yeah, we have set up about a 20 to 25 minute presentation and still allow for public comment to take place after that.
Okay. So I'm assuming that we can handle the public comment in 15 minutes.
I don't know. We'll see what comes about.
We're going to have to put some kind of fence on it because we've got a lot of things to do here, but we want to make sure there is adequate time for that. So with that, I'll let you go ahead and take over this part.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before us is on the agenda item is a brief summary of what this item is about, and I'll summarize that summary. Basically, as the board has known over some time, there's coalesced around the Humboldt Bay Trail issues, a planning group that's been working trying to devise how we could proceed. And with the good support of Humboldt County Association of Governments, a planning grant was provided for last year, whereby some further feasibility work took place. There's about three major, with this one, there's two other major documents that have been focusing on trail development throughout the whole Humboldt Bay, more than Humboldt Bay, but at least for sure the Humboldt Bay area. And so that all that documentation and work has gone into this trail planning group. And in October, when we met here last time, Karen Deemer with the City of Arcata, who participates on it, volunteered to give a presentation to the board so that we can get some more of the highlights of what that work is trying to achieve and what direction it needs from this board, as we are one of the cognizant agencies that have land use responsibilities within the Humboldt Bay Trail area of concern. So just to draw it real quick, I'll ask Karen Deemer standing by with the starting it off. We also have Spencer Clifton, who can lead it off, I believe, from HCOG, can give kind of an overview. And there'll be others, I think Jen Rice is in the room to stand by for any technical questions we may have. And then after that, we can have a dialogue with Karen and Spencer, and myself, I can jump in and go from there and see what direction we may take from it. So without further ado, I'll just turn it over to Spencer to lead us into this effort.
Spencer drew the shorter straw, so I'm just in charge of technical support today and answering questions.
Good move. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Railroad Authority. As John mentioned, I'm Spencer Clifton. I'm the director for the Humboldt County Association of Governments. I have been directed by the HCOG board through some advocacy positions that were expressed by various independent board members to pursue examining a rail concept and a trail concept in between Eureka and Arcata, launching on some of the previously accomplished work that was done by the Natural Resources Division services of the Redwood Community Action Agency. Now, Alan, you might remember this because as I look across the authority panel, I think you were the only board member who was present and sitting at the time that I appeared before the authority in the city of Fortuna, and in a meeting here, and I asked at that point for conceptual approval of a trails concept, and it was expressed then quite clearly to me, and I have sustained the concept through all of my involvement in this planning process, that the trails project should not interfere with the rails and the restoration and the resumption of rail services. Anybody who's worked with me on that planning committee can tell you that has been HCARG's intention. That was my, I'm going to say, marching orders from the authority. I know what your mission is. I respect your ability to pursue that mission, and certainly did not intend to embark on planning processes or procedures or project identification that would hamper those efforts.
That squares with my memory also.
Okay. I think that you and I are the only faces I recognize from that time. So last year, after having some direction from the HCARG board to pursue a trails concept and having had some direction, and we're all just, I affectionately refer to them as marching orders, to try and keep the two concepts separate, to not involve any projects that were going to harm or negatively impact the rail traps. We did form a trails planning group. It's we used a considerable amount of personal energy from a lot of impacted individuals. The association funded this our Humboldt Bay Trail feasibility study. It's available on HCARG's website. We also have some CDs.
What'd you have to go out with?
Those CDs are copies of the entire report, and they're not copies of the PowerPoint presentation that you're going to get. There was a long and a short version, and people know me know that I really don't know anything about short versions. And we were having a little bit of trouble getting the short version up onto that screen. So I have the long version, but I'm going to do the best I can to shorten it because I'm hungry tonight. People say I get grumpy. As you might have noticed on the initial PowerPoint slide projection, there was a consulting team comprised of Plan West, which is local, SHN, Sellers, Huber, and Nelson, which is also a local firm, as well as Alta Planning and Design. And we had representatives and advocates from the cities of Eureka, Arcata. We had slots for participation from the Arbor District, from the rail, from Caltrans, from the Humboldt Bay Bicycle Commuters Association, from HCARG. We even eventually provided participation slots for some of the resource agencies. We had participation from the California Coastal Commission. We had political representatives from the Board of Supervisors, from the authority, both wearing two hats, Supervisor Woolley in that capacity. Somebody even said that he might argue with himself over which hat. No, it's like, okay, John, authority member, and okay, now it's John, Supervisor. We also had elected officials from the city of Arcata. And, you know, we had so many people trying to participate in this process, just hammering out the planning framework, hammering out goals and mission statements. Took quite a considerable amount of time and a lot of give and take, and there was a lot of give. People had to kind of try and put aside their own personal ideas and try to establish commonality. And I could just kind of read through some of these things. We were looking at our planning framework. The trail was defined as the Eureka to Arcata segment. There's no inference to which community gets named first. It was a proposed multi-use trail to draw local residents and visitors to Humboldt Bay to discover natural, cultural, and historic resources, building connections between people, place, and community, promoting recreational coastal access, safe, enjoyable, non-motorized transportation, healthy lifestyles, natural resource appreciation, and economic vitality. Part of the process involved some mapping. We took advantage of some aerial photography resources that were provided both by the City of Eureka and Humboldt County Planning Department. And the entire corridor was broken up into 12 sort of equal segments. There's up at the top of that map, you'll see a segment 1 and 1A, because there were two approach concepts there, and then at the bottom you'll see a 12 and a 12A, and there were two approach concepts down there as well. There was a significant public workshop that was held in the Warfinger building, probably one of the most widely attended workshop and presentation and expression of interest from the community that I've probably ever seen with regards to any kind of a regional project. These are the segments that there's some brief descriptions there. Talking about rights of way, we're talking about G Street there, and that's in on the north end, the Arcata segments, and then the North Brown Bridge there down at the bottom. You'll see there's the 2, the 12, and the 12A, and one was to tie into a 101 crossing concept, and the other was to use the existing, I don't know if we call that a drawbridge facility, the cross Eureka through with that bridge facility. Originally, I believe it was a drawbridge. These are some of the project benefits that were identified in that team. There was an estimation, and it's important to identify that that is an estimation and not a projection that was made with some level of high confidence by the consulting team, but based on trails concepts of this type in similar communities pegged by cities on both ends. They had figured that there would be about 660,000 users a year. And again, that's an estimation. I think that breaks into somewhere around 1,800 data users. So you can see that would be definitely on the upper ranges of use. It was also estimated that approximately $3.8 million would be generated by out-of-county visitors as a benefit to the local economy. And again, the very last one there, it would generate over $70 million in health benefits and 30,000 safe vehicle trips. Now, and again, those numbers are estimates, and in order to get to that 70 million number, and it's key, the consulting team estimated that the 660,000 users would have to be not duplicated users, and they would have to have bicycle and or pedestrian as their main exercise regimen. And I believe they used Karen was $102 per person. And again, that's unduplicated users, and so you have to understand that those were estimates and certainly not projections that were generated as a result of the consulting team.
But I think the general theme from the consulting team was there's more and more information out there now that trails are certainly assisting with local tourism dollars and certainly assisting with the overall health of your community.
Yes. And feel free to jump in there on anything, because I'm not, I have not hit the road circuit with this presentation ever. So,
Appreciate it.
You guys,
give you some practice.
You're on the cutting edge. So the team did look at various design standards and concepts, and there were trails that are all typical of Class 1 bicycle trails, standards that provide for travel in both directions, and they're a minimum of 8 feet.
You like your picture of example there.
And here's an example of a rails with trails concept that I believe this takes place, or this exists in the east somewhere.
Portland, Oregon.
That's Portland?
Yes, that locomotive site is Portland, Oregon.
Thank you, Marcus. So and that what that one graphic does show is that rail concepts and trail concepts can coexist, and there are various assorted separation treatments that can be used to allow them to separate. Here's one here that showed kind of the trail separated by a little bit of a landscaped fence and a little bit of a little ditch work, and some meanderings. And again, I'm not sure exactly where that one is. Marcus, where is it?
I don't know. That's Portland again.
Here's another look at Portland's system. One of the things that I found in some of my early discovery was that there was no specific requirement for a distance. Nobody said it had to be 25 feet from the center line of the rail, or it had to be 30 feet, or it had to have a fence of X number of height. I think it was based on probably some assumptions of liability arranged around train speed and frequency. Here, one of the hardest things that I think that we swamped the consultant with was that we recognized very early in this process that there were some significant challenges. There were challenges that were going to be based on wetlands issues. There were going to be challenges based on billboard issues. There were going to be challenges based on geometry and topography. And
challenged area, less challenged area.
And so that was one of the things that we wanted to try and do by throwing those and identifying those areas, were to try and get some kind of an idea of what those challenges were, the order of magnitude they were, and whether or not we could get our arms around them and try to effectively solve them. There was also the issue of crossings throughout the course of the trail itself, and there are several of them that are streets, and some of them are commercial. There's the Small Boulevard Road crossings at I and G, Jolly Giant Creek Bridge, Gannon's Loop Bridge, Jacoby Creek Bridge, Breakup Bridge, Business Park and Driveway, Simpson Lumber Driveway, the Eureka Slough Bridge, and then the X Street road crossing as you come into town there off the edge of Target.
When you read through the entire feasibility study, you'll see that especially those crossings associated with creeks and sloughs, the bridge crossings are a huge expense associated with the trail design estimates, cost estimates that are in that particular study.
And there was some significant discussion that some of those structural improvements were going to need to be accomplished by the Railroad Authority, and that we might be able to utilize that time-wise as an opportunity to add trail concepts to those bridge improvements. This portrays some of the constraints and opportunities on the northern segment. There was driveway and railroad crossings at the City of Arcata's Corporation Yard. There was already some existing public access at Jacoby Creek used by hunters. And is that referring to the Little Red Fishing Game Cabin or such? Yeah. Okay. And some of the old bridges and how they may be able to be replaced, and in those replacements or in those improvement phases have some opportunity to try and improve the bridge a little beyond the railroad needs to accommodate what would be trail needs as well. Some of the opportunities was that there are some existing parking and access points at the Arcata Interpretive Center, and there's an existing railroad trail for a few hundred feet there. There was also a place there where there was some double tracking that is still there, and so it provides for a fairly wider right-of-way footprint, and that the Jacoby Creek Bridge was scheduled for replacement. In the kind of the central section of the study area, we again identified, the consulting team identified some additional constraints, right-of-way construction, constriction from Caltrans improvements. Caltrans has a shop project, that's State Highway Operation and Protections Program. They have a project going on around the Eureka Business Park. They also intend to rehabilitate the roadway from the Eureka Slough all the way to Highway 255. They also, in this section, identified existing signs. I think the signs are the double. Some of the opportunities around this particular segment, it didn't really have a whole bunch of geometric constrictions or issues there, but there was an opportunity to work with the railroad to redesign some of the levees as part of the repairs to accommodate the trail. And one of the comments that we actually received at the conclusion of our process from a member of the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors was that in our planning jargon or lingo now, we're talking about global warming and the rise of sea level, and that there might at some point be some improvements to the railroad in between Eureka and Arcata that would at some point accommodate or take advantage of some considerations